Hello students, Mr. John here. Welcome to Chapter 19, Lesson 5. We're finally looking at our last lesson of the Middle Ages. Boy, have we learned a lot. We got a little bit left today. This one is called the Late Middle Ages. Makes sense, it's at the end. Have some vocab, like we're going to learn about the plague and the Reconquista. And we have a quiz at the end. So let's talk about this, shall we? What are we learning about today? Well, today's lesson hits a variety of topics, and they are mostly morbid in nature. We've got Black Death, some Pope-on-Pope action, and war. So much war. In essence, the late Middle Ages were a little rowdy, and not a great time to be alive. We end off on a somewhat high note, though. We talk about one of the most famous lady warriors in history, Joan of Arc. So that's pretty cool. There she is, in all her glory. Let's do this. Alright, we're starting off with the Black Death. So Black Death, where we begin, it was not fun. There had been some good times. The 1100s and 1200s were alright. And then we hit, it all hits the fan in the 1300s. A terrible plague swept through Europe. A plague is a disease that spreads quickly and kills many. This plague was known as the Black Death, and it was likely bubonic plague, carried by fleas that were in turn carried on rats, and then rats are everywhere. So it came from fleas. Those rats, they could even live on ships and then travel across the ocean to different places, which led to the spread. The Black Death started in Asia, and it made its way to Europe on the Silk Trail. So it got to the Middle East first, and then Sicily, and then from Sicily on to mainland Italy, where it then spread sort of northward into France, Germany, and then across the drink into England. By 1351, plague had hit Scandinavia, those sort of northern European states. Everywhere the plague hit, it killed half the population. That's right, half. Half the population died. Now, half the population dying had some significant impacts on the world. It was hard to find workers, so wages increased. Alright, silver lining. There were far less people to feed, so food prices tanked. Okay. Trade declined, and that's not great. But serfs, sort of your peasant class, gained more rights as there were a lot less of them. They had become scarce commodities, so they had more bargaining power. As a result of the plague, as did the Crusades, the feudal system weakened. So between the Crusades and this plague hitting, all factors contributing to the weakening of the feudal system. So the lords keep losing power, basically. So that's not awful. Silver lining to the plague. Let's talk about the division of religion and politics. So the period of 13 to the 1400s also saw a period of political turmoil. Kings were in a constant struggle with the church, but the church had its own problems. In a period from 1378 to 1417, there were multiple popes, all claiming to be the real pope, so no one could agree on who the actual pope was, and this was called the Great Schism. A little interesting nugget of history. The church played a large role in society all over Europe, down to the lowliest serf. They did weddings, funerals. Anytime someone was born, wedded, or died, the church was involved. So because everyone was involved and everyone knew there were multiple popes, they were pretty disturbed by this whole multiple pope thing. This, sacred figure, and multiple sacred figures, and they can't figure out which one's the real one. It was all very disturbing to them. Like, imagine if we had multiple people claiming to be president. It's a little unsettling. So we sort of lost some faith in the church. Now, there's your pope fight. Pope fight. Alright. Let's talk about the 100 Years' War. The 100 Years' War was a struggle between Britain and France. For a long while, there had been tracts of land in France that had been under the control of British lords. European royalty, this pool of royalty, was relatively small, and, marriage is here, and alliance is there, and all of a sudden you have Englishmen holding, fairly large tracts of land in France. This was the case of King Edward III of England. He owned some land in France, and then through some rationale, he determined that he was actually the King of France as well. So he took a large force, a large army, and invaded France. Yep. The English actually met with initial success. They had some weapons that were unmatched by the French. Among them, the English longbow, a famous weapon in history. The English longbow, they actually had an early form of cannon too, but specifically people, when they think of the 100 Years' War, they always think about, oh, English longbow. The English longbow, they said, could be as tall as a man and could kill a knight, a fully armored knight, at 300 yards, which at the time was pretty amazing. There they are. They're very large bows. Now, they took a lot of skill to handle as well, though, and strength. Bowmen, often peasants, spent some time training. They were skilled warriors, skilled in their craft. Now, this war turned in favor of the French in 1429 because of a 17-year-old girl. A peasant girl, nonetheless, came to Prince Charles of France, and she claimed to have had a vision from God, instructing her to help her countrymen purge the English invaders from her homeland. She went along, so he was like, all right, let's do it. She went along and met up with a force to break a siege, the English siege of the French city of Orleans. Orleans, yeah. Like New Orleans, but just the original Orleans. It is said that the faith of this girl, sort of heroic cast about her, inspired the men, and they ended up breaking the siege 9 days later, and then they were like, OMG, it's this girl. She's, blessed by God. She helped lead us to victory, and she basically reached hero status, and now we're still talking about her. Part of why we're still talking about her is she was captured by the English and burned at the stake as a witch. She had actually really done nothing wrong, but she was burned as a heretic and a witch. Years later, not really that many years later, the Catholic Church determined that she wasn't really a witch. Everything that the English said about her was made up, and then she was canonized as a saint. So now she is Saint Joan of Arc to this day, and the death of their hero basically spurred the French on to kick English butt. They killed their hero, and they were able to regain all the territory they lost in France and kick the English out. So that's Joan of Arc in a nutshell. There she is, gonna get burned at the stake. Oh, good. Now, let's jump real quick to the Reconquista. So during the Middle Ages, Islam controlled much of the Iberian Peninsula. So when you think Iberian Peninsula, think modern-day Spain. Let's see, Christians in the region worked to expel the Muslim invaders from Europe in what was called the Reconquista, which you may have guessed by now means reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula. They were largely successful with this. By 1250, Spain consisted of 3 Christian kingdoms, Portugal, Castile, and Aragon, with the only Muslim presence left in the small country of Grenada. In 1469, Aragon and Castile became the Kingdom of Spain, so Spain is created when Ferdinand of Aragon married Isabella of Castile, merging their kingdoms into the Kingdom of Spain. Ferdinand and Isabella put some strict Catholic rules in place, so we're having a Catholic-only country, and they basically told everyone to convert to Roman Catholicism or else. Jews were forced to convert or leave or be punished. If any heresy was suspected, the Inquisition would torture and kill. So they created the Spanish Inquisition to go basically kill heretics, which was anyone they didn't like. Their targets, mostly Jewish folk who were the scapegoat of Europe. Everything was always the Jews' fault. When Spain reconquered Muslim Grenada in 1492, the Muslim inhabitants, had to convert or leave, and most of them just left. They went across the Mediterranean to North Africa. So there you have it. Ferdinand, Isabella, turning Spain, the Iberian Peninsula, basically Roman Catholic or bust. And that's what they did. They successfully conquered that whole region, forming the Kingdom of Spain. Still got Portugal chilling over there, and then they took Grenada as well. So that's it. A lot going on. You've got your basic quiz here. And that's where we're at for today. We should be moving up on the studying and testing soon. All right. Have a wonderful day, and let me know if you have any questions.